Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Q&A Cafe for SAP Business by Design. Today we're doing intelligent invoice scanning with Laura Hicralo. Just a reminder that I'll be recording this session, so everyone will remain on mute. And I will send out the recording through the GoToWebinar tool. I think it goes out about 2 days after this session, so you'll be getting it on Friday. As well as you can find it in our YouTube channel with all the other ones that we've done this past year. And you'll be getting some registration details for next week's Q&A Cafe. Next week's is with Catherine Alford. She had some time in her schedule to do something for us. And she is doing lease accounting IFRS 16 for, of course, SAP Business by Design. So I'll hand it over to you, Laura, and I can see your screen and everything's good.
Perfect. And Kayla, I just emailed you the presentation. I didn't have a chance to upload it into the shared folders in the GoToWebinar, so people can download it if they want to after. If you don't mind putting that in there, that'd be great.
I don't mind.
Awesome, thanks, Kayla. So, hi everyone. I'm very excited to go through the new feature in for the 2008 release of intelligent invoice scanning. This has been, for me, a long-awaited enhancement on the OCR scanning capability. So I'm, again, really excited to kind of show you what's out there and ready for you. So let's dive into it. All right. Very easy agenda for today. It's basically set up and execution. It's not to get it all set up, not much of a rocket science. So it's really just a quick couple of things to get activated. So just a brief introduction on where ByDesign was, where we got to now. So OCR for supplier invoicing has always been a part of ByDesign since ByDesign was first introduced. It was, in my opinion, very clunky because it required you to scan your documents into a PDF and a text pair of documents, so you had to have them matching. So you need a special software, a special scanner to be able to do that, which basically made you essentially print out a hard copy, go through the scanning. It was quite arduous to upload them through the collaboration window. And then the general recognition through that was just using a fuzzy match keyword search that you would configure in business configuration for things like supply, how your suppliers would recognize the invoice, your PO number, the company, the supplier, and things like that. So it didn't really have a very high match rate. And with that, and it was really more for purchase orders that preceded the supplier invoice to essentially find that supplier invoice number and just bring that up and do an adopt matched. So there's really a kind of low match rate and a low to no adoption for it. But now with the new intelligent scanning in 2008, we only are going to require that the PDF documents are needed to enable this functionality, which is great. So you basically, and I know a lot of our customers that get their PDFs via email from their suppliers, they're saving them into a share drive, a share folder, things like that. So really that is, that process can still remain the same. And you can upload the invoices in one of two ways. You can continue to use, if you are using the existing scanning functionality, using the collaboration window, or you can upload them directly in Business by Design. And I'll walk through the two differences and two examples. The scanning now utilizes SAP's, what they call the Document Information Extraction Services, or DOCS, with machine learning. And drum roll, it's free. A lot of other services, especially things like Concur, Bill.com, things like that, they can charge up to $2 to $3 an invoice. I know Concur is quite expensive because some of their OCR matching requires them to have manual intervention on their end to actually do the final matching and things like that. So you really can get this without any additional cost to you, which is awesome. So a couple of things to note, depending on where your companies or where your locations are within the world. The supported languages currently are English, German, French, and Spanish. And the service itself is not available in the Chinese data center currently. So if you do have your instance being hosted in China, for other locations, they won't be able to use this. And then this is just a quick sort of picture of how the whole process works. So basically you start with either a file share, so uploading it into the system, or the file share through the collaboration window for the PDF. It'll basically stage that, it'll basically read into the cloud platform, and it takes really 3 different kind of key functions within the supplier invoice itself. So it'll read the header information from the supplier invoice, basically the invoice number, the invoice date, invoice total gross, the tax, your PO number, their PO number, things like that. And then it also reads the line item with the quantity, the description, the product, and the total. And then as you go to the vendor side, it'll read the vendor information, the vendor address, emails, tax IDs, and things like that. And then it brings it back into the system. So once it goes through, and it goes through the whole process of reading, scanning, parsing out all the information, it brings it into a staging object within ByDesign. And from there, you have an option to either automatically create the supplier invoice or manually create it. So to enable the service, you've got really just 2 options within business configuration. So if you'll go into business configuration, step 4, the questions, under purchasing, and then under supplier invoicing, within supplier invoices and credit memos, there are 2 options. 1, do you want to enter supplier invoices via PDF scanning? Absolutely tick that off if you want to use the service. And then the second one is an optional one. Do you want automatic creation of invoices from the scanned documents? Basically, the difference here is when it creates that new staging document, it'll keep it there, and then you basically have to, once you do your review process, click and create the invoice. For me, I highly recommend, if you're just starting out using this process, if you just want to see what it does and how it matches and things like that, then I, again, will highly recommend keeping this off until you feel more comfortable with the results, because you'll wind up, if it tries to create invoices for you, you'll wind up voiding them and things like that, and it's just a pain. It's much easier just to do the review, create the invoice, and then do like a final review. Additionally, if you're trying to use this for non-PO supplier invoices where you want it to read in the information, definitely leave it off to do the review and modifications, right? And then again, if you've ever seen in business configuration, if you're trying to look and fine tuning, if there's anything that's associated with it there, and you look up supplier invoice or supplier invoicing, you'll see a fine tuning activity called supplier invoice keywords. That's no longer needed. That was to support the old functionality. All right, and then you want to enable all of your users and the roles within the supplier invoicing work center. There is a new invoice scanning work center view. So you'll add that guy in, and then add that to all your roles and users. The other area, if you intend to do more of a bulk upload into the system of purchase orders, you'll want to install the collaboration window. Again, talking with some of the people on our services side, that a lot of you may or may not have the collaboration window or even know it's even there. It's kind of a cool little tool. It will produce little toaster pop-up messages for any of the tasks that would appear in your Launchpad, and you'll be able to see those things happen in real time. But it also allows you to do like customer lookups and things like that. And it also, at some point, it enables collaboration if you have like a telephony provider. So it does a lot of different things. And if you don't have it, you'll want to go to self-services overview, and then my computer, and install additional software, and then download the collaboration window. Pretty simple. And there's a couple of setup pieces that you'll do to enable the collaboration window. One, in order for the system to suck the invoices into itself, you'll want to set up either a desktop folder or a shared drive folder for invoices. So basically, like I said, if you currently are using like a shared drive folder for bringing invoices in, if you have multiple people in your AP department, then continue to use that, and you can just map that folder directly into the system. So you'll go into, once you set up that folder, you'll go into settings and then invoice scanning, and then these settings you'll want to enable. So enable your scanned invoices service, and then only upload PDF files. So it's a little misleading because it says only upload as opposed to match, but you'll want to tick that. And then you'll map that observed folder, so that folder that you just created, or map it to whatever your shared drive folder is, so the system knows where to look to find those PDFs. All right, and that's it. Very simple, easy peasy. Not much else that you have to do to get this working. And as we go through the execution of it, you'll go into the Supplier Invoicing Work Center, invoice scanning, and you'll see kind of the queuing area for all of the scanned invoices. And then the first thing that you'll want to do is synchronize master data. Now, this is going to be a regular process. The vendor information is essentially like cached on the docs server, so it keeps all that information out there, and you'll want to make sure that and that's what it's using to do the matching. So as you create new suppliers, if you want them to get picked up in this search, then you'll want to use this, as well as anytime that you're making changes or updates to suppliers. So again, I would typically, maybe run that in first thing in the morning, just to pick up any sorts of changes or things like that. And then on the ByDesign side, we'll do this live too. You'll basically go in to that area, upload, enter the company information. So currently the company information isn't being read from the invoice, so you want to bring that in so it knows where to post that invoice to. And then and that's, again, more probably for the non-PO pieces, because if it's matching the PO, it knows what company it's pointing to. And then upload your PDF file so you can drag and drop that. The process is not restricted to a one-to-one. You can put as many purchase orders in here as you want. My recommendation, though, because as you do, everybody knows when you do the upload attachments or things like that from ByDesign, it's a one by one by one. You can't just select multiples and drag them into the folder. So that's where the collaboration window really gets you, the collaboration window really gets you the more advantage, where you can select 100 supplier invoices that you receive in the day and just drag them all in at once. Right? And then once you're done, you start the process and you're off to the races. It does take a few minutes to work through, just because it is parsing out all that data, it's scraping everything and making sure that it's putting it in the right places. The other way that you can make it happen is through that collaboration window. So through here, you'll have your folder, wherever it is, again, wherever you're putting things, drag and drop one or multiple invoices into the map folder. The invoices will move to one of these folders. So the first time that you set this folder up, or the first time that the collaboration window sees this folder, it will create 3 new folders in there for you, one called upload success, error, and then a retry. With this new service, as it feeds them into the system, I pretty much have not seen anything go into error or retry. It'll put all of your files into upload success. And so the other nice thing too is that it actually creates another file structure under the upload success. So if you do have, you can use this now as the replacement of your share folder, because it doesn't remove the PDF attachment out of the system and put it into ByDesign. It's just a copy. So you'll still have on your share drives or on your folders all of the copies, the hard copies from your suppliers, or electronic copies from your suppliers on a separate drive, but with the advantage that they're also making it into ByDesign and appended to the purchase order record. And once the engine is done doing its job, you'll have an option in here to review and post. So you'll see the invoice header information of the scan values, what it scanned, and it'll copy everything into the system of whatever it's actually matched. And then this option will be opened up so you can make the changes to anything if there's a different calculation or something wasn't found correctly. And then you'll also have your items list as well to match against. And then depending on that business configuration setting, you might not even, unless you're right there, looking at it, if you have that option to create invoices automatically, you won't be able to really go in and review these. You'll have to go into the invoice itself. It'll be set in preparation, or depending on how it matched, maybe in an exception or ready to post. And then you would review it there, make your updates and create, and then post the invoice. Or if you have that business configuration option turned off, it'll leave it in that queue status with a status of scanning complete for you to review, make your updates before you click create invoice. Right, so some notes, the invoice templates can't be used with the scanning view. Basically, I think you have to scan it and then you can apply the template after the fact. The payment terms and Incoterms are taken from the PO if there is a purchase order reference. Otherwise, it's going to default from the supplier master record. So if by chance you have your supplier master set up as 20 days net and they come back and they do it on a purchase order that's 30 days, you'll have to manually update that. It doesn't read those payment terms and the Incoterms. And then the following fields are being used to find the matching PO, which are going to be your supplier, your company, the bill to, any of the item information, the external document ID, so your purchase order number, and then the invoice date. So you'll be able to hopefully find matches on that. And then my particular findings in here, for me, obviously, I'm not running my business, so I'm kind of manually creating purchase orders to force them into the system to align with the data that I have in there, so they're not necessarily formal, probably correct invoices like you would receive from your suppliers. So I'll tell you my findings. I also am lucky to have Marissa, one of our customers, on the phone as well, who was one of the, her company was one of the beta testers of this, and they had extensive testing. So she's going to give you a little bit of feedback, and we'll open it up for questions. So, if you had specific questions on sort of like what works, what doesn't, we can hopefully tag team that. Obviously, I found it works best with a prior PO reference. If it finds everything, it's going to fill everything in appropriately. If you're expecting it to do stuff based on just a supplier invoice, it is probably going to be, you'll probably find that it doesn't match very well in the beginning. So the one thing to really take into consideration with this is that it is machine learning. So every time you add the same type of supplier invoice in, so let's say it's your utility bill or phone bills or things like that, that same format, as it matches that same supplier, it's going to start to learn what that format is and where you're making the adjustments and where it needs to make the changes. I can even tell you, I probably went through this in my own testing just even this morning, getting ready for this. I went through the same scenario about 8 or 9 times, and just right before this, I actually got all of the data that I wanted into the proper places. So it does work. When I first started it, I was filling in a lot of different things. And now with my last iteration of it, it did actually learn some things. If you do have items IDs and quantities and units of measure, they're not always going to be recognized. So again, that machine learning needs to take place in there when you're using non-PO invoices. What I found, and again, maybe Marissa found something different, I'm still having to click the button for calculate total amounts, even though it's reading and populating the gross total and tax, and then the receipt date is needed. And then obviously, if you're trying to import invoices with no PO, they're still going to need further processing for cost allocation on the line item level. So that is pretty obvious as well. So if you're thinking that this is going to be the magic bullet you can just suck it in and everything posts and it's utopia, there's still a little bit of work that you're going to need to do. But I think it is it could be a very huge time savings for everyone. I added in here some references, so the help guide, a really good blog, and then there's 2 videos in there. So if you do download this, you'll be able to see it. And then there is also someone actually added in improvements to vote on. So basically, when they first started configuring this, they actually had in the spec that they were going to have an email address that you could send. Your suppliers could send the invoices to, and it would automatically import. That hasn't gotten there yet, but they have an influence request out there, 252970. It already has enough votes. I think it has 22 votes the last time I looked at it. So go ahead, add some more votes into there if you get a chance. So let's go in and do a quick live demo in here. All right, so we'll go in. I'm just going to show you the purchase order that I created in here. So I've got my purchase order 1200. Yep. Purchase order 1200. That's sitting out here for $148. It's got 3 line items for non-stock items. They're already coded up to my cost centers. We're having a party in the sales department, and we're getting a couple of kegs and some popcorn. So we have that set out to our supplier. And so the first bit is, again, if I have my, I don't need to do my goods and services receipt. So I've got my invoice that's sitting out here. Well, actually, let's kind of start this over again with, just do a quick copy just to show a brand new one. And we'll order it. All right, so we've got our purchase order 1201. And so we've received our supplier invoice from our supplier. And so it's got basically all of our information, the sold to, shipped to, customer, the invoice number. You'll notice, again, the payment terms, even though they're going to be different than what's on the supplier, it's going to read what came in from the purchase order, our order number, and then all of the details related to those line items, as well as our subtotals, tax, and then the total due. Right. So to get this guy to work, we'll go into our supplier invoicing, and then the invoice scanning piece. And I'll run the synchronized master data just so you can see what it looks like and how to do it. Basically just select, it's always gonna, this row is always gonna be listed here just to show you the last time that someone actually ran the job. And it doesn't take too long to run, depending on how many suppliers you have, and then how many updates or things that you've made. So it does take just a minute or 2, but I know I just did it this morning, so we can kind of keep going. So what I'm going to do is upload, and we'll fill in, again, you have to fill in your company. And then I can just drag and drop that invoice into the upload area and start that process. And as you go back to the work list, and like I said, when you're in the upload area, you can take multiple purchase orders, so you don't have, it's not a one-to-one process. And then this will move from scanning in process to scanning complete in just a second, but this is going to be exactly the same data, so we'll just jump into the Betty Crocker invoice that we've got already set up here. So as I go into the setting, as the scanning is complete, we can click on the review, and you'll see all of the scan values that came into the system and how they line up with everything on the reviews. And again, because I don't have this set up to immediately create the invoice, I can impact any of these fields before I before I post or before I go ahead and create the invoice. And then you'll always see your side by side. That's going to be in your invoice. It's going to be in as a scanned attachment as well. And again, you'll notice because, like I said this morning, as I started this out, it wasn't reading the supplier number, even though it was reading the total tax and total gross. I had times where it wasn't reading the product ID, it wasn't reading the quantities and things like that. So up till now, with this last iteration, like I said, I think it may have taken about 10 times. Now I'm getting all of the information from this purchase order, or from the invoice into my supplier invoice. And so any updates that I want to make, I can change right here, and we can save it. We don't need to, but we can go and directly create the invoice. And so as I mentioned, the one thing that I'm finding in here as I'm going through that you still update the receipt date, and then I'm still having to do the calculate total amounts, even though in that last section it was feeding it in from the detail. One of the things I've been talking with product management, so if you do start trying to play around with this or work with this, anytime you see errors or it's not reading in what you would expect, they're asking you to put in, screenshots of what you're seeing in ByDesign of what's being matched and what's not, append a copy of the actual supplier invoice and put a ticket in, because that's helping them feed the engine again. So it's helping them learn. They only had, very much like sample data that they were working with, just like I am. So they're trying to teach it based on generic type data. So as they get more real life examples from the community, it's just going to make the engine much better. So they are asking you to put incidents in as you're working along with this. Right. So that's it. And once I'm done, I can just go ahead and post it. All right. Yep, okay, so I've got a duplicate because I've probably created that invoice 7 times over today. And then the other piece, so just showing the kind of the collaboration window side of the house. So let's say, again, I've got, this is my folder in here on the collaboration window. You'll see all the invoices in here that I've had success and not success on. But if I wanted to take multiple invoices, I can just, rather than doing a 1-by-1, I can just take everything and feed them into here. So I have it open. So it'll take those 2 guys in. And as I open it back up again, it happened so fast. You would see they would sit here in a queuing section until it's uploaded. And now, because I opened it up on 9/16, I now see those 2 invoices that immediately came in to an upload success. And then as I go back into this again, I've found that it takes a little bit of time for it to sort of make it over into the system. So even though it's kind of where you're uploading it directly into this area, when you just upload it as an attachment, when you're doing it through the collaboration window, it sort of bypasses this area, goes right to the docs server, and then it feeds it back into this area when it's done. So don't expect that as soon as, if you are using the collaboration window, don't expect it to immediately show up, because it's doing all of its reading and everything like that directly in the server, and then it's bringing it back into the system. Okay. So here now they showed up. So I've got the scanning that's in process. And then again, we've got our other one that's in scanning complete from the one that we just uploaded. Probably, what was that, about 3 to 4 minutes that it takes for it to read read the invoices. So with that, like I said, this is a very quick thing. There's not a whole bunch else to review. Like I said, my recommendations: put it in, turn it on. Even if you wanted to put it, I never tell anybody to put anything in production, but this, if you have that option to not create the invoices immediately, this doesn't hurt anything. This will give you a good indication of what can be read, what can't, just by coming in, feeding your invoices into the system. And then even if you're manually creating your invoices after the fact, this will give you some good indication as to whether it'll work for you or not.